Welcome to Chicago Style Parenting, where we delve into parenting life in Chicago and uncover the resources, information, and support that Chicago families need. I'm Amy Johnson, the Executive Director of Neighborhood Parents Network.
And I'm Sitaara, Director of Marketing, Content, and Social Strategy at NPN. Today, we're talking about the difficulty of finding ways to take care of ourselves while also taking care of our children. This can be particularly challenging for parents who are caring for children with developmental differences or children with high needs.
With that in mind, today we're talking with two people who can help us figure this out. Lydia Thibodeau is a mom who understands this struggle because she lives it. She is the parent of a child with a disability and the founder of Sommet Nannies, with offices in Chicago, Boston, New York, and Washington, D.C. Welcome, Lydia.
Thank you.
We're also talking with Erica Hornthal, a board-certified dance movement therapist and licensed clinical professional counselor. She is the founder and CEO of Chicago Dance Therapy and author of the award-winning book, Body Aware. Welcome, Erica.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Lydia, let's start with you. How has having a child with a disability altered the way you approach and plan your day and your son's day?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. We go by his mood, and that actually started even when he was a baby, before we knew that he had differences. I would text our nannies throughout the day, like, how's his mood? How's his mood? And I remember saying that to my sister once, and she's like, I never do that. So that was kind of something that stuck out even from an early age, that we gauged the way his day was going to go and the activities that we would do largely around his mood. For us, that's if he's already in a little bit of a fight, flight, freeze zone, we're not going to go to a trampoline park. We're going to be wary of places where there's other kids, particularly those younger and smaller than him, where he might be not being safe with his body. We're going to be sensitive to situations. If there's like a birthday party that day that we were invited to, it might or might not be a good option to attend. If he's in a good space, I really like to have a combination of things that we do. It usually involves two different outings. One of them is usually quieter, like a library. I also really like to do play groups. Yeah.
Well, that brings up my next question. How do you approach, plan, manage play dates with other children?
Yeah. So Brooks is level 1 autistic, and we like to do play dates with neurotypical kids as well as neurodivergent kids. Both can go well depending on the situation, but I particularly love seeing him around other autistic children. I think that they get each other on a cellular level. I think that they're so open and tolerant and accepting of each other. If someone is stimming, if someone's having a hard time, if someone's crying, if someone's eloping. We had a play date last summer where another autistic child was eloping and running away. And one of my son's strengths is he's an athlete. And so he took off running after him and said, like, please come back to the group. And he actually was able to get this child to come back. So it was just really great to see. And I think having him spend a decent amount of time around other children with similar strengths and also similar struggles has made him feel less alone. I never want him to feel like he's the child that's standing out. So I do go out of my way to make sure that at least once or twice a month we're doing play dates with other autistic children.
Yeah. Well, how has having a child with a disability impacted you socially? Have you identified meaningful friendships with parents who have similar life circumstances?
I know that not everyone would say this, but my experience having a child with a disability and a difference has truly been overwhelmingly positive. I found people to be really accepting, accommodating. There's been times where at the grocery store, we're getting close to a meltdown. I can tell that's where we're headed. And I've said, I am so sorry, but like, I've got to get in front of you for this. Would it be okay if we just check out these 2 items? People are really receptive and open, and I've been so grateful. As far as what I get to do socially, I also like to spend time with families that have neurotypical kids and families that have differences. I think for my other autistic moms, we're in the trenches together. We're living the same life. We're going to resonate on like, okay, who are you using for OT? Oh, you got a call from the school today? So did I. It's just like a different type of friendship because we're truly in the thick of it with each other, living a similar life. Whereas I've got friends that also have 5-year-old children, but they're different than Brooks and they're more neurotypical. As long as they are open to learning about our experience and not trying to give advice where it's not due for a life that they're not living, I think it's really important to maintain those friendships too, because I do think that you can get over-indexed on your child's struggles, right? And finding people that like that's what you're going to be talking about. And sometimes it's nice to step away from that and get to be a different kind of mom and talk about like what's your kid being for Halloween? What did they, kind of get out of the autism world a little bit and into to other things as well, and just feel like you've got a nice, well-rounded social circle.
Yeah. Over-indexed. I hadn't heard that phrase before. I get it.
It's my finance background coming out.
It sounds like having that social circle of like friends that get it, and also maybe an escape from with people that don't necessarily get it, is a definite way of like filling your cup. What are some other small ways that you find to fill your cup every day?
I'm really passionate about this. And I think that moms often forget to fill their own cups. And yes, we know the whole thing of like, put your mask on before you put your child's in the airplane analogy, but we forget to do it. I think the longer I've been in this world, the more I realize that that's really important, and that me maintaining my own sense of regulation really does help my child. And when I'm running on E, he can feel it because I'm quicker to be frustrated. The environment is more tense, and when my cup is filled, I'm happier. He's happier. Everyone's more regulated. Sometimes you can't do the big things. You can't go on the girls' trip. You can't even go out to dinner sometimes with your partner. But I find it's the little things. For me, it's like reading a book and lighting a candle at night. I love candles. And with Brooks's disability, we can't have the candle on the table during the day. So I'm going to light that candle at night when he's sleeping. I'm going to read my book. Sometimes I'll have a cup of hot chocolate. It sounds really small, but it is such a nice way to end the day and have me feel refreshed for the next day. And it's something that I know I can do every night, no matter how rough the day was. These circumstances are going to come together so I can get that little bit of a cup fill at the very end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, that is huge. And that's something, as small as it seems, that's something that, even parents that might be disabled themselves or single or have a lack of, a lot of money or financial resources or time. Like, I think those are all things that everyone can find time to do, and knowing that they can turn to those small moments and find some peace and some joy for themselves, and have that to look forward to during the busy day, is something that can be really monumental in people's lives. Have you ever used movement to feel better or to manage stress?
Yes. I do have help with a nanny during the day, and my son is also in school part-time. So I really, last year and this year especially, have focused on taking one long walk a day with my dog. He's liked it. I like it. We make it happen no matter how cold it is. We just bundle up and go, and it's at least a mile, but it's usually like 2 or 3. Sometimes I have a podcast going while I'm doing that. Other times I'm just thinking. Other times I'm doing nothing. If it was a really rough morning, sometimes like the last thing you want is more sound in your ears. You just want like quiet and to be in your body. But that's also been something that's really filled my cup. Getting those walks, getting fresh air, even when it's cold. It can be really recentering.
Yeah. Well, Erica, this takes us to your expertise. You've heard Lydia give us a glimpse into her life raising her child with a disability. From your professional counseling experience, does this sound familiar to you?
Yeah, I mean, this is not a foreign narrative by any means from the parenting perspective, but also from the perspective of the child as well. Feeling the ups and downs of the day, the social pressures, the movement challenges, right? Not just cognitively or developmentally, but regulation wise, right? Our nervous system is going to constantly be scanning our environment, and sometimes we can tell when that's happening for our child, but so often it's an internal thing that they're experiencing that they can't always vocalize or verbalize. So paying attention to those nonverbal cues is vital for parents and kids.
Yeah, you mean like how Lydia was saying she was following her son's mood, um, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's just also creating space and time to be present to what's happening. I think it's common regardless of what we or our children are experiencing. We tend to pack our days as a society. We're very go, 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 do, do, do. There's a bit of hustle culture, and that can easily bleed into all of our lives. We have to set some time and space to actually witness some of the things that are going on, right? Like Lydia modeled so beautifully how she was so attuned to her son's mood, right? Maybe fluctuations in it. Doesn't mean we always know what to do with it or that there's anything to change about it. But the awareness piece is so vital. And I think if we're too busy, we miss those cues many, many times.
Yeah. Well, tell us about your experience with dance movement therapy. Are the benefits of movement therapy for everyone, including those with physical or developmental differences, and just what is it?
Yeah, I'll start with what it is. So, as a field, dance movement therapy is a creative arts therapy. Many people listening may be familiar with music therapy, art therapy. There's even psychodrama or drama therapy, poetry therapy, bibliotherapy. These are actually science backed, evidence backed, what we call creative arts therapies. And what makes them so powerful is they go beyond words. So, specifically, dance movement therapy is a psychotherapeutic use of dance, nonverbal communication, body movement, body language, body awareness. Not always that stereotypical view of dance that we see in society or on TV, although it is included, to really help integrate the mind, the body, the spirit of the individual to help support community, connection, self esteem, overall communication and expression, especially when we or our children have difficulty expressing ourselves through what we think of as like traditional communication.
Wow. I didn't know very much about this. So, how does movement support neurodiversity? Or
Yeah,
a little more detail.
sure. So I think first and foremost, we have to remember or reclaim that everything is movement. Movement's always happening. So even if we are binge watching something on the couch, there's still movement happening. Lydia, again, beautifully mentioned something about this cellular connection that we see across the board, but certainly with kids who are experiencing similar developmental or cognitive differences, they speak each other's language. Mirror neurons are firing. The cells in our body are always activated. Proteins are moving. There's chemical processes happening, digestion, respiration, perspiration, all the shuns, right? All these senses are constantly happening, and that's movement. The absence of movement is the absence of life. So it isn't just the quality of our movement, it's just remembering that movement's always happening. And that is the bulk of our communication. So what we're looking at is not just how well someone's moving, we're also looking at how we can support movement to support change of behavior, change of thought process. Everything starts with movement. It truly does. And we're not just looking at exercise. That's such a small piece of the movement that we do really in our lives, period. So a lot of times people or parents especially will say, well, I haven't been to the gym in years, so God knows I'm not moving. And that couldn't be further from the truth, especially if you are raising a child with a difference or a disability. You are probably moving more than all of us. You're doing a lot of movement, a lot of juggling, a lot of balancing. And sometimes it doesn't feel like we're doing a very good job at that, but you are. You're still doing what needs to happen to be living right in the world. So we look at movement as a way to assess, to intervene, but also just to become more aware and observant of what's happening, and knowing that at any point we can change the way we move to change the way we think, not just for our kids, but also for ourselves. So again, Lydia mentioned so much about regulation and these small movements. I think it's really important to remember that it isn't the size, it's the impact. And that the smallest movement can have the largest impact, especially when we're talking about these anchors. An anchor is something, it's a ritual, something that brings us into the present moment of any given time, whether it's that cup of hot cocoa, lighting the candle before I go to bed, we oftentimes give up on these things, or we forget to do them thinking it's not going to make a big difference, but it really does. It absolutely does. So we look at all of this when I'm working with parents, when I'm working with the family system, when we're working with the kids themselves. We want to make sure that movement is part of the equation, because not only can some of our children not verbalize, but that is such a small percentage of what's going on in the system anyway.
Wow. So my next question was going to be, is movement therapy something that you recommend to, all of your patients, the parents, the children that you're seeing? It sounds like absolutely, right? Like something that everyone can benefit from and something that people are naturally doing on their own. But if you wanted to answer that question at a more thorough level, I would love to hear a little bit more about the recommendation process and how the type of movement therapy that you typically suggest.
Sure. It's I guess it depends on the practitioner, but coming from my perspective, it really is no different than finding what we might call a traditional talk therapist. I personally take insurance like a lot of other counselors do. So sometimes people come to me just because I'm paneled with their insurance company, not necessarily because they've sought out specifically dance movement therapy. My answer to that question is I hope that in the near future, because I think it's getting that way, every counselor is more holistically movement based. So that while I don't want to see dance movement therapy go away, if I knew that more therapists were more inclined or geared toward a body centered approach, not necessarily from the intervention level. I don't expect them to know, we talk about a little bit about like movement analysis. I don't expect every therapist to know that or even care about it. But I think we're really missing the mark because we're not always bringing body and nonverbal communication into the therapeutic relationship. So yeah, I think it's for everybody. I would love if after this conversation, everyone started looking for a local dance movement therapist. I think at the end of the day, it's just recognizing that you are speaking so much more than your words say. And if you're in a place where you're feeling not supported, really overwhelmed, your body needs to be heard too. And just unfortunately, not every therapist is equipped in that way to listen to the body. Don't be alarmed or concerned if you're not a dancer, if you don't identify as a mover. Again, we all are. It just takes that lens to help feel more supported in what you're experiencing. So it's nothing to buy into. You don't have to wear anything special. You don't need special shoes. On the other hand, maybe you're not interested in formal therapy. Everyone can benefit from some type of movement. Personally, I love dance. I know it comes with a lot of stigma. We're afraid that we're going to be judged or we have no coordination. Honestly, the best thing you can do for your body is to dance, because it is the way that we move emotions through us. And even if you are doing everything possible and feel like you're actually managing your emotions really well, you can still benefit from it. Just move your body so that anything we're experiencing, whether we're aware of it or not, is not staying stuck somewhere, and it actually has a place to come out. Because again, as Lydia said, we are those co-regulators for our kids. And especially when we have kids that are so aware of nonverbal communication, the slightest bit of dysregulation is going to be picked up. And we can never be completely regulated, but doing movement practices, dance, taking those long walks, it is all the difference. Sometimes it's so beneficial.
Wow. I'm sold. I'm going to go move. I am like, I got a playlist ready. I'm going to have a jam session. No, I think so much of what you said just resonates, but it's also like the things that you might not even think twice about, but just makes sense to hear someone say that, being able to use movement to get those emotions out and using our bodies to speak and communicate can be super helpful. And we might not even realize that we're kind of bottling a lot of it up inside by being a little movement resistant because of stigmas and concerns about everything else. So thank you for shedding some more light on that. Now, Lydia shared about how she fills her cup and uses, her form of like self-care and self-time at the end of the day to practice self-care. How does movement and rhythm support communication so parents can set boundaries and practice self-care?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And I guess I want to preface it with it isn't so easy to change in terms of like, you're going to listen to this and be like, okay, now I know exactly what to do. Remember that it's always a habit. You know, we're conditioned for safety, our kids and ourselves, not happiness. So we're always going to revert back to patterns of movement and rhythms of movement that help regulate, or what we think of as regulate, our system. And sometimes it actually does the opposite. So what I try to encourage people to do is just become more aware of what your day-to-day rhythm looks like. And that means the tempo, the speed at which you operate, your resistance to slowing down, things like the flow, how rigid or how bound, how tight your movement is. Oftentimes we're really hypervigilant. We're trying to get ahead of what we call a quote behavior, right? Or trying to mitigate or remedy something that maybe hasn't even happened yet. And there can be a lot of bracing. It isn't that all of a sudden we're going to recognize this and let go, right? Because that's going to feel really unsafe to a body and a mind that has been hypervigilant, right? And for good reason. You're not doing anything wrong. This is just how your body is learning to survive, right? So we can become aware. I always tell people to use the acronym ACE: awareness, challenge, expand. Anytime you're experiencing a thought, a behavior, a mood shift, if you're not already aware of what your body is doing, pay attention to it. What posture is happening for you right now? It could be amidst reprimanding or a dysregulated moment, maybe that we intended to be a little bit calmer about. It's never too late to notice what you're doing with your body. Once we're aware of it, we can challenge it. You know, if my shoulders are really high and I say like I lost my neck, you know, I'm aware of it, and then all of a sudden I can drop them, right? Or I can lower them. And then the expression and the expansion is to do some movement that actually helps alleviate the tension. Shoulder rolls or a little shake. And yes, it's for us, but our children will pay attention to that too. And it can be a really wonderful coping strategy for them as well.
Wow. So it's nice to hear that the movement doesn't have to be something really large, like the simple act of, rolling your shoulders away from your ears. Or I love, like in yoga class, they'll say like unclench your jaw even. Like sometimes you feel that and you don't even notice it. Can you explain any other simple, maybe small movements that we can do right now that can help calm our nervous systems?
Yeah. Actually, I take a lot of cues from what we talk about as stimming behaviors, right? Oftentimes there are rhythms, right, that are being expressed in those moments that parents can also relate to, use, tap into. Something like a shake or a wiggle. If we're conscientious of where we are or who we're in front of, do it in your shoes, wiggle your toes, right? Kind of roll your ankles while you're standing in the grocery line. You know, I don't think movement is supposed to be complicated. And we've complicated it more now because we've outsourced so much of it and we have so much less movement in our day. Whereas, centuries, millennia ago, all we did was move. We moved to avoid threat, we moved to celebrate, we moved to eat. So stack your movement. Don't worry about it being in the right place at the right time. Do what you can in those moments. And it can be the smallest thing, a shift of your breath, a shift of your posture. Again, the smallest movements actually can have the biggest impacts. And just that reminder, like everything's a rhythm, so if things are feeling really fast, take that moment to slow it down. Slow your breathing pattern, slow your talking pattern down. Take control of what you can when it comes to the way you're moving, and it will have a huge impact.
That's really helpful. As you were talking, I was thinking about the things I do to calm myself down, and I just don't think I put too much thought to it. But when I was at the dentist the other day, I just had my hands in my lap, was like constantly rubbing one thumb over the other. And that seems similar to what you were talking about. And once you're aware of that, I could could pull that movement up in other nerve-wracking situations.
Yeah, and you can move it around the body too, so sometimes we identify or we associate some of these movements with nerves, right? And then like, oh, I must be nervous. And then sometimes we actually want to hide it, so we control it, right? We clench our hands or we hold them tight. So just taking that moment, like you said, you noticed you were rubbing one thumb with the other. I might say, oh, okay, this is my coping mechanism, right? Or this is me trying to self-soothe because maybe I'm feeling uncomfortable right now. I can relate to that. I personally get very nervous at the dentist. So my toes are wiggling and my hands are, I'm like trying to sit still for them. So you can migrate that movement, maybe it becomes massaging each hand, right? Rubbing your forearm. Again, not every movement's going to be possible in that moment because we might be, may need to stay still in some of those instances. But yeah, paying attention to what's going on and noticing the judgment, because sometimes we do that as parents with our kids, right? But we do it to ourselves too. We judge our movement and then we stifle it. We freeze it or we shame it, and remember that a lot of that movement is actually biological. It's our nervous system just trying to do its job, and our mind likes to creep in and tell it what to do. So embrace what you're doing, especially if it's not hurting you or the people around you. It might be just what you need.
Yeah. Lydia, did this conversation with Erica bring up anything for you? Did you relate to anything Erica was saying? And yeah, I guess I'll just start there.
Yeah, Brooks is a huge movement guy. Like he's our athlete. So I think we try to incorporate movement as much as we can. But I think sometimes we think of it as like, get the energy out, get the sillies out. And like really it can be kind of therapeutic in a lot of ways. I think there's more intentional ways we could be. He actually loves dance. And we often say like, we want to sign you up for a dance class. And he always says no. But I think if there was more of a like, trying to think how to say this, but like low commitment, low intensity, like he's just there to move his body and have fun, I think he would be all about it. And I do think movement is extremely regulating for him. And for most people, but it feels like it's even more critical for him, actually, and a lot of his friends who have similar challenges. It's definitely something worth exploring a little bit more, because I know it's vital, but I think that like we could be tapping into it in a different way. And Erica's definitely brought up some really interesting food for thought around that.
Yeah. Well, back to the parenting experience. How do you stay positive and remember the big picture on the hardest days?
One of our son's earliest therapists said to us, progress, not perfection. And that really stuck with me, because I think you can get really bogged down with developmental milestones, which we're all very attuned into when our kids are really little and you're going to the pediatrician and they are not meeting these milestones, and you get concerned or you're relieved they met the milestone. So I try to remember, progress, not perfection. Like I can look at a situation like one very recently. My son has spent a year being scared of lifeguards. He is afraid that they will blow their whistle loudly at a pool and it will be an unsettling sound. He doesn't like loud noises at all, but he really doesn't like them out of nowhere. So for that reason, he will not go near pools where there are lifeguards. And it's prohibited us from going a lot of places, as you can imagine, particularly over the summer where he absolutely loves swimming. But this last weekend, we did go to a play date at an indoor pool with other autistic children. And I said, as I always do, like, you don't have to participate. Like, they are in the pool. We stood behind the glass for 45 minutes just watching these kids. And every time I'd say, like, do you want to give it a try? He said, no, there's lifeguards. We talked through what we do about the lifeguards. They may blow their whistle. It may feel loud. They're likely not blowing it at you. They're there to keep us safe, like all the things we do to lower anxiety. But I always say at the end of the day, but it's your choice. It's your choice. If you'd like to have your play date out here watching the kids, that's okay too. He did end up saying he wanted to try it. He got in the water. He was having a blast, which I was already shocked. And then lo and behold, the lifeguard did blow a whistle at another child, and his head kind of shot up and he looked around, and then he looked at me and said, that wasn't that loud. And now I'm not scared of lifeguards. Like, just like that. And it was this huge moment for us because we have not been able to access pools unless it's like a hotel pool for a year. And so it might seem small to someone else that he was able to like go in a pool with his friends and enjoy it. But for our family, that's a huge milestone. And those situations and the progress that we have made is what gets me through the day and on to the next, and feeling really optimistic about the trajectory that we are on and the person that he is now, but the person that he's capable of being and the life that he can have, even with this disability.
That is a wonderful story. That made me so happy. I'm just
me
happy for you.
Me too.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's the tiny things that get us through the day, right? I mean, that wasn't tiny, but to the outside world, that would seem like a tiny thing. But it's huge. Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Lydia and Erica. We appreciate this conversation so much, and I think our listeners will too.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, Erica, actually, how can our listeners find you if they'd like to follow up or learn more?
Oh, yeah. They can, probably website is the best, ericahornthal.com. There's a little bit of information there, but at the end of the day, if I can just be a resource to people, right? I recognize I might not be in people's areas or neighborhoods. There's so many dance movement therapists in the city of Chicago because it, for a long time, was a hub of dance movement therapy. So if any of this is intriguing or you just want to learn more, reach out, and I'm always happy to connect people, closer to your neighborhood. Yeah. And just, Lydia, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your story. That was a beautiful example. Yeah, just keep moving. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much, Erica. We'll put your information in our show notes. Lydia, if a listener is interested in nanny services, a special needs nanny, house manager, chef services, all the things that So Many Nannies does, how can they find you?
Our website is also a really great place. So it's just www.somaynannies.com. And then we've got a link to book a free Q&A call with our team right on that website.
Okay, we'll add that to our show notes as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you both. Listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Tell us what else you'd like to hear about and who you'd like to hear from by clicking the link in our show notes. Hit the subscribe button to stay in the loop, and we'll see you around the neighborhood.